What's going on, friend? In this episode, we're going to be comparing Strats at 3 different price ranges. Amor de lanzas, and now we break it down, baby. Alright, thank you so much for being here once again, and remember, as usual, like, subscribe, and do all those cool little things that we like to do on YouTube so that you and I can stay in touch with each other. Anyway, like I was saying, we're going to be comparing 3 different Strats. Coming at around maybe $1,000, this is the Mexican-made Stratocaster Deluxe. And this is a discontinued model, but this would be maybe like the Player Plus at this point. And this used to be an HSS model, but now it's got some fat 50s. And I like those pickups because they're basically like the epitome of what a Fender pickup sounds like, right? I want to say that it's maybe like the most used pickup in Fender history, but I'm probably wrong. So correct me in the comment section down below. Thank you. But let's go to the next guitar. Coming at a whopping around, I don't know, $1,700, it's the Fender American Professional 2 Stratocaster. And this is basically like the American standard of our generation, right? So let's say people like Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan, this is what they were playing. Of course, from a different era. And I do like that because I want to say like this would be like Fender's flagship traditional Stratocaster, okay? Coming in a horrible $2,100 or 22 almost. It's the Fender American Ultra Stratocaster. And this is Fender's modern offering. So basically they just went all the way here. Like they're not really sticking to tradition. They're just trying to make the best guitar they can make. And as we're going to discover, probably the best guitar that Fender makes. Okay, let me put it aside and keep talking. Let's get this out of the way. I know that everybody, their cousin, their grandma, their auntie, la tia, la abuela, la prima, everybody has covered this subject. But I feel like on YouTube, we have like a saturation of content that is really well made and super informational, but it's always like trying to be driven to make you buy the new guitar. Why, you might say? Well, because a lot of these channels that I like to watch, and I'm not bashing them in any kind of way, a lot of these channels are actual guitar shops. So of course they want you to buy more guitars. And I think everybody knows by now that the cheaper guitars are basically what drives companies. As soon as they have a cheap guitar, those companies go to be worth millions and millions of dollars. Take, for example, PRS. They make these exquisite American guitars and they're like amazing. Their attention to detail is like perfect, whatever. People say that they're too perfect. Can you believe that? I cannot imagine anything being too perfect, but I don't have one of those guitars, so I cannot even talk about it. However, the guitars are driving their economic growth as a company. It's the PRS SE because they sell thousands upon thousands upon thousands. I would be surprised if PRS doesn't make kind of like around the same amount of money in 1 year selling all their models of PRS SE compared to the money that they've made since the beginning of the company with, like, let's say, private stock. I'm pretty sure those numbers are pretty different, right? And I think like the same thing happens with Fender and like Epiphone and like all the cheaper brands, because a lot of people that are not even guitar players are more compelled to start like learning how to play guitar and get into guitars with a price point that it's a little bit more friendly, let's say, right? And I feel like for that reason, there's like this perception in the market that the cheap guitar is as good as the expensive guitar. And at least in my experience, that hasn't been the case. I've played very few really expensive guitars in my life, and they do feel very, very different. You know that they're expensive the second that you're playing with them. There's like a big change. However, for you to have that big change, you have to really pocket a lot of money. I want to say the different price ranges work a little bit differently. Let's say anywhere from like 100 to 300, differences are not going to be extreme. Maybe you're going to get a better brand, but all of them are going to have like maybe like a photo flame. They're not going to have reinforced necks and all these kind of things that make a guitar good. And then let's say from 350 to maybe $500, they're all going to be similar. Maybe some of them are going to have better pickups. Some of them are going to have better aesthetics. Wherever they choose to allocate the little chips and coins, they're going to have a different balance of the guitar they're going to have. But they're all going to be like very similar in quality and like man hours put into the guitar and all this kind of stuff, geekery. Then maybe from like 500 to 1,000 is where you see like the fiercest competition. Everybody's trying to make the best guitar under 1,000 that they can. Although I want to say like the bigger brands are starting to break that paradigm and like they're not afraid to push it all the way to 2K. And with that, then ESP did the same thing, Schecter did the same thing, and now it's very hard to find guitars under $1,000. And that's why a lot of people love PRS, but that's a different video. Let me stay on track. And if you like this kind of video, why don't you take a second right now and go like, subscribe. How are you doing? Are you okay? All right, let's keep going. So like I was saying, that battle for the $1,000 is very, very, very fierce. So I feel like for that reason, a lot of companies want to say like their $1,000 guitar is better than any other $1,000 guitar. And then I see a lot of YouTubers basically saying the same story. Granted, not all of them. There's a bunch that tell you what I would consider the truth. And I want to take this moment to take this little section out of the way too, because I know that a lot of you are super crafty and like you really know how to get your hands dirty and go get like sandpaper or whatever kind of like tools from StewMag just to make your guitar the way you want it. And maybe for you, a $1,000 guitar isn't the same as a $2,000 guitar because basically you could do everything yourself except choosing the right woods with a little bit more consistency. And I'm going to explain what happens. For example, if you see this made in Mexico Fender Stratocaster, which I consider be of really, really, really high quality. I really like this guitar a lot. And sometimes, and I said this in a couple other videos, I feel sort of dumb having an Ultra when I have this because this is such a great guitar. And there's not really much that you need to do to make it perform at the same level as the Ultra. And I want to say this is this particular guitar because in this case, we have this big headstock. And it does play a role in this particular case. I've played a bunch of Mexican Stratocasters. And what I've noticed almost like consistently is that the body and the weight ratio with the neck is not really right. It's always like body heavy, always. At least for me. And I don't know, maybe I played like 20 Mexican Strats throughout my life. And even like a couple days ago in another session, I played another Mexican Strat, same thing. Small headstock, body was heavier than the neck. And it's not a big deal. I'm just like pointing things that make the better, or whatever. Take all this with a grain of salt, okay? I'm just telling you my opinion. So in this guitar, you don't have to battle that because just by having this bigger headstock, we have a better balance. And I didn't know that when I bought this guitar, but now you know, okay? And the other thing is that in a Strat, you can put any pickups that you want. So sound, I don't feel like it's gonna be too big of an issue. And that's why I was saying that you can make this almost perform like an Ultra. Again, you cannot change the fact that the wood is not perfectly balanced, but everything else you can kind of do. So let me start pointing things out. After owning these 3 guitars for almost 2 years, I've been paying close attention to try to find the differences and see if, do you really need an Ultra? Do you really need a professional too? Or is the Mexican Strat as good? And all that kind of stuff. You know, like we all make these questions. And so I started noticing the differences. First thing, the body carve, it's a little bit different. I feel like the made in Mexico, the carve, it's a little bit safer in the way that it's not super aggressive. When you use the Ultra, you feel like that is super bent, especially this part right here. It feels like it goes way far back, almost like more comfortable. Your arm falls lower. I want to say comfortable, but you know what's comfortable for me might not be comfortable for you. So you got to go play these guitars, right? I'm just telling you my experience. This guitar, the carve, it's a little bit flatter, a little bit safer, less contoured. Let's say, okay? Second thing, since we have this kind of bridge, which is the one with the 6 saddles, it has those tiny little Allen key screws that they just like grate your hand. If you're trying to palm mute through a song, you will be getting little marks, which is okay. You know, I don't mind too much, but that's something you don't get on the Ultra or even in the professional too. Next thing, the rolling of the fretboard, even though there is some rolling in this fretboard, it's very, very minimal. But then again, that doesn't really bother me too much, but it's something that it's worth saying. You can probably roll it yourself and it wouldn't be too hard to do, but is it really worth it? Anyway, let's just keep going, right? A little bit more annoying would be that the fret ends, I don't know if they didn't cure them right. And I know they can say like, oh, we don't know about the weather and this and that, but you're a big company, Fender. You can cut the ends of the frets and make them right. You can do that. It will just add, I don't know, 5 minutes more to your process and it's going to cost you maybe $2 more, but let's just judge what we have and not what it could be, right? So that's the thing. And you will feel like they're a little bit sharp and sometimes they will just get you, man. They will snag you and you will feel a little bit of a gash in your hand because it got you. Next thing, the nut. Even though it's like pretty well cut in the sense that I don't feel like I have too many problems of intonation in this nut. And I want to say that maybe that is the saving grace in this particular guitar, that the nut is pretty well cut. So I got really good tuning and really good action and all those things I think are pretty nice. But the corners are not rounded. So let's say every time like I'm like trying to go fast and let's say I have a riff that it's like super involved and I'm like going hard and I have to keep going to position one after a few times. my finger starts to hurt because there's a little bit of a sharp edge right there, right? So like I was saying, all those things might seem cosmetic, but I feel like they're more than just cosmetics. And again, like I was saying, you can do it yourself. All those things, you could fix it. And I would love to do it in this guitar and see how it goes. Maybe I'll do it in a different episode. Let me know in the comment section down below if you would like me to do that to this. I don't know, maybe let's call it the Ultra-Fi experiment or something. But I would love to do it just because this guitar is so good. Nothing to fault it. Next up, the Fender American Professional 2 Stratocaster. This is pretty much, like I said, the flagship model right now in the American lineup. And this is a very, very, very complete guitar. I want to say that maybe the thing that they're really lacking is lock-in tuners. But I put them on myself because I felt like the benefits are just like so much bigger than the hassle of just like putting them on. And honestly, it's like so easy to do. It's a really well-rounded guitar. I feel like any other standard. And like I was saying, it's like the Jimi Hendrix guitar or like Stevie Ray Vaughan or anybody who had a Strat before they had other factories, right? All they had was the American standard. And this would be pretty much the latest reincarnation. I feel like key features would be that the pickups are like super, super nice. I like to say that they're like a Fat 50s, but like more modern with slightly a little bit higher output. But they still capture that woodiness of the guitar because they're still low output enough, right? They're pretty nice. So what are the things that make this guitar better than the Mexican version? Okay, so first and foremost, this guitar is like super, super well balanced. And there's something when you buy an American guitar that it just has like this solidness. I don't want to say that it's the quality of the wood,
but it's probably the quality of the wood.
Like when you grab it and just like the neck just feels in a certain consistency, it's like the density of the materials are different. And even though a lot of the guitars are lighter, it's like the balance just feels really, really like hitting a sweet spot. That's my opinion. Other than that, the body is pretty much like the same kind of shape. I want to say that this is a little bit more contoured because even right now, just coming from that one and getting this one, I instantly feel like my body just like lands a little bit better on it, you know what I mean? Then, of course, we have like the fretboard. It's rosewood, and there wasn't rosewood in the Mexican factory, like I don't know, for the past like 10 years until now with the new Ventera collection. And as you can tell, this is a very, very, very dark rosewood, which I love. And it still has a lot of personality because there's a couple like little streaks of like cherry color that are just so cool. Of course, again, the fretboard is like super rolled. Not only the edges of the fretboard itself, but every single fret. Let me see if I can do a super little zoom right here. The frets themselves are super rounded. So when you try to move in this fretboard, you feel absolutely nothing but a bunch of like little balls. And none of them feels sharp. All I'm saying is like this guitar feels really good in the fretboard rolling department. It's not too much, it's just right. And then when you get to the nut, same thing. It's pretty well rolled, enough to be like a very, very comfortable guitar. So I would just say that the improvement in this guitar, of course, sonically, because the pickups that come with the guitar, I feel sound better than anything that comes in the Mexican factory, but you can change them. And you're still under the price. But I still feel that this guitar, it's a better guitar than the Mexican, just because there's a lot of work that you don't have to do. There's a lot of labor involved in getting the guitar just right. But Fender still takes it to the next level. Enter the Fender American Ultra Stratocaster. And this would be not like the flagship, but Fender trying to showcase what they can do in the most modern sort of features, that it's still a Strat. It's not a super Strat, or it's not like trying to be an Ibanez or a Jackson or anything like that. It's just a Strat that feels really good and that has a few little modern things. But moving on, let's say what makes this guitar better than the Mexican. Right out of the bat, I feel like the carve in this guitar is totally different. Like just grabbing it, even coming from the Professional 2, it almost feels like it's lighter, even though I know it's not. And this is what tricks me, because I remember once Trogley said in a video that one guitar was heavier than the other, yet felt like lighter. And somebody in the comments was saying like, oh, I didn't know that weight was something subjective. And it's not that weight is subjective. Let's say if two objects are the same shape and they are the same weight, there's nothing different about them. But just by the nature of different shapes, the balance plays a huge impact on how you feel the heaviness of that guitar, because it's going to pull more from one place to the other, which is going to create more effort in your arms while you're trying to hold it. When if it's like super well balanced, the guitar itself is carrying some of the weight, if you know what I'm saying, just like by the way that it manages like the center of gravity and all that kind of stuff. And I feel that's something that only happens in higher tier guitars. But let's keep talking about why this guitar I feel is like better, and it is a step up from the other two. Okay, we talk about the carb and how that affects the perception of weight. Not the weight, but the perception of weight. And of course, when you lay it in your body, it just feels really, really good. At least with my body type, this just feels perfect. Rounded where it needs to be, flat where it needs to be. Same thing here with the belly curve. And then the wildest curve right here, which makes it that when you put it in your body, the guitar just hugs you a little bit differently. And just when you put the weight of your arm in the guitar, it's like you engage a certain position that the guitar gets into, and I just really love that. The next thing would be the neck and fretboard. In this case, we have a neck that goes from like a C to D shape, which basically means that it just has like an asymmetrical shape, where like a C shape would be that the tallest part of the neck is like in the center. A D shape, it's a little bit off center. And I think that just works really well just because when you hold it with your hand, it adapts to the curve of your hand a little bit better than what the C shape does. But subjectively, I kind of like a little bit of a thicker neck. In the Ultra, it's a little bit on the thinner side. And the more you go up the frets, the thinner it feels like it's getting. And the same thing happens with that Mexican too. It's like that same carve that it goes from fat to thin, but it just feels really nice. And then the rolling of the fretboard, it's just beyond. They go, and I want to quote Cooper Greenberg from Alamo Music Shop, again, a store, because he was saying that in the Ultra, it just feels like they went all the way until they get it right. And that's exactly what happens. And if you know anything about manufacturing, just to cut the costs, they just spend less time on each guitar. So basically, the guitars that they sell cheaper are just guitars that are less complete. And when you get a guitar like this, what you're basically buying, it's like a proper setup. The frets are leveled. The fretboard is rolled the way it should be according to what Fender thinks it should be and according to what like the competition in the market is doing, right? Because Fender is not in a vacuum, right? There's a bunch of brands that are doing a great job making guitars. So definitely they have to make a product that is competitive. But mostly what happens is that they don't go all the way. And that's why some people make the jump to custom shop. Because in the custom shop, not only you have like a little bit more of a say in terms of what you really want in your guitar to be, and not just, you don't have to really order it like that. You can just like select packages, but the packages are like wider as of to what you can get. Like there's a lot of different pickups, a lot of different neck carves, a lot of different materials that you can just select out of their little catalogs. You can just go to Sweetwater and find whatever custom shop guitar you want. And they're all going to have a bunch of different things and a bunch of different parts. So you have a little bit more freedom, right? But let's say in the mass produced, this would be what Fender considers to be a Strat for the modern era, fully developed, finalized, the way it should be, not cutting any corners, doing every single curve that they need to do to make this guitar comfortable, feel nice in your body, and sound great. And I cannot really feel the selection of the woods because if we just hear the guitars right now, like this acoustically, I'm just gonna do this G chord. Definitely, at least this is the one that vibrates the most. And in this case, as you can tell right here, this one has like the acrylic, I don't know, celluloid-like material in the pickguard. And the other ones have the aluminum one, right? And that creates a big difference acoustically as of to what we hear or like the projection. I feel like that kind of material acts a little bit like as an amplifier, especially in the high bid range. And this one, it's a little bit darker in that way. But just the way you feel the guitar vibrating against your body, this one is like, you really feel it. The other ones are a little bit less, which makes me feel like the woods are better or whatever. Like, let's say that knowing what I know and having these guitars and the experience that I've had, if you were to do a blindfold test, I would probably recognize that this is the Ultra just because of how resonant it feels in your body. Almost like if you ever experienced a vintage guitar, and you know how when they're like super crystallized and they're old, they just feel like they can resonate forever? That's exactly how it feels with the Ultra. So that at least tricks me into feeling like this is like a higher quality guitar and like a better instrument. But just again, to play devil's advocate, every single time I play this little guy, I feel like the differences are so minimal that you can almost like neglect them. And that's where I feel like the discretion of whoever the user is what's gonna come in handy right here. Let's say if you're a person that you don't care about high action and you're just like really good at playing the way you play, and it doesn't matter what guitar you play, you always shine through. I feel like you don't need to buy the more expensive guitar, because the more expensive guitar, the only thing it's like actually giving you, it's like a little bit more comfort, a little bit less rough feeling. And back in the day, I don't think they were like super refined. They had to be like pretty rough too. So if you're that kind of player that you're like not really that sensitive to that kind of stuff, my friend, there's no need to spend that kind of money. These guitars and everything they're doing in that Mexican factory, including Charvel and Jackson and everything that they're doing in those factories, is really high quality instruments. Of course, like we were saying, they just don't finish the instrument.
And then to play devil's advocate for the other guitar,
I feel like the American Professional 2 just nails the sweet spot, you know what I mean? It feels sort of like modern enough, but traditional enough. It's so comfortable, so well rolled. It almost gives you like that reassurance that you're playing a quality instrument. Again, that C neck, just because it's a little bit deeper than the D, I like it better. Maybe because my hands are pretty big. This just feels so good. This is not the first American Pro 2 that I've had. I had another one as well. Even though that one felt really good and like dialed really nice. And honestly, that first one that I bought had the nicest color I've ever seen, because it was like super pale, like way bluer. And then when I bought this one, I was like, wow, this feels so green compared to my old one.
okay, I digress.
So again, if they're like so comparable, and we said that the major differences are sort of like cosmetics, what would be the main reason why I consider still that the Ultra is the superior instrument? Let me show you this simple example. In the case right here of the MIM, in my 15th fret, if I go to my high E and I try to bend, it chokes. Just right there. No matter what I do, it always chokes. And of course I can fix it, right? Because I can just go with a file and fix it. But then again, I'm not an experienced luthier. I can mess it up. And if I mess it up, that's an expensive fix. And you know, if you're going to take it to like a luthier or something like that, you're spending a lot of money. And let's say if you were buying your guitar at Sweetwater or any of these other stores that now offer the Plex service, maybe you won't run into that problem, but then you know it's another $300. And then you start thinking, for $300, should I just move to the American Pro 2 instead? And then again, I would tell you, let's say if you like a higher action, that probably wouldn't be a problem for you, because in my case, I like my guitars with very low action, and just having that 12th fret right there basically makes that is the limiter. That's my guitar telling me, this is as low as you can go. If somebody would take care of me and just file that one, maybe you could go a little bit lower, but nobody's gonna do it. And I would love to do it, and maybe I will, but I haven't done it in like 2 years of owning this guitar. Okay, let's put it down. Then Jorge, what do you think about the fretwork in the American Pro 2? The American Pro 2 has the advantage of design. The 6105 frets are so tall that they basically invite you to push your fingers really softly. Almost like the softer the better with this guitar. So that's a big plus. And of course, it allows you to get low in the action as well. But again, it wasn't perfect. Right now, I think I have it like as low as it can go. And I got no dead frets right here. But if I were to go a little bit lower, somewhere around like the 7th or 9th fret in the first 2 strings, again, I have a little bit of a bump in those frets. And it sounds like a double note kind of thing. You almost hear it here. But of course, I did a setup on the guitar because I use it every single day. It's like a workhorse for me. So I was just like, okay, that's as low as I can go, without having to go again through the troubles of like getting a file and just like power through my insecurities and just go for it. Because you know, once you start filing things down, there's no way to put the material back up. So that's why I haven't felt compelled to embark in that adventure, right? And in the case of the Ultra, none of those issues. I feel like the fact that it has a compound radius definitely helps, but even with the best compound radius or whatever you have, if the frets are not done perfectly, it's not gonna feel the way this guitar feels. And I remember when I did the review and like in a bunch of other videos that I've done, I said that the guitar feels so good that I didn't even feel like the need to actually do a setup, so I got really lazy on it. But since then, I've done my setup. I'm really happy with it. And so much so that I bought the Hot Noises pickups because I was like, okay, this is an Ultra. It's like a super modern guitar. Might as well put the super modern pickups. But there's some magic with these Noises pickups. Like, there's like a sweetness, and there's like a separation between the notes and the string. And like we will hear in the examples up next, there's something you can really hear about like the friction of your finger on the string. It's just like close to magic. So why don't we just hear a few sounds? Let's go. Right? So after this long conversation and all these cool tones that we've been listening throughout the whole video, let's draw some conclusions. I think that the first thing that we can discard in this whole conversation is the sound. And then you're going to be like, dude, but the sound is the most important thing. And of course, I agree with that. The sound is the most important thing. But in the case of a Strat, it's so easy to just change the pickups that most of the time you can just get any sound that you want. And just even checking these few examples, these three guitars sound totally different. And I could probably just flip the pickups in any way that I want. And what is going to really come into play is what you really like. What kind of music are you playing? Do you play rock? Do you play metal? Do you play blues? Maybe if you play like heavy metal, you don't want to have single coil pickups. Maybe you actually want humbuckers. And you can do that in a Strat. Maybe not more than 5 or 6 soldering points and then like a couple of screws and you're good. You know what I mean? So sound is not really a factor. What really comes into play here is how comfortable the instrument feels, how natural it feels to your body. And here is where the big elephant in the room lives. Are the guitar influencers really lying when they say that the cheaper guitar is better than the expensive guitar? And first I'm going to give you like the cop-out or like the PC answer. And it's like they're not really lying because let's say as a tool, the Mexican version of the Strat is as useful and as good as the American version. You can go from session to session, from gig to gig, and still have the same performance that you needed. And if you're a great guitar player, nobody's gonna complain that you showed up with the Mexican Strat. You know what I mean? Unless, of course, they're like snubs and they read that it says MX, and then they're like, oh, this is a Mexican Strat. So if that's the case, well, there's nothing you can do. But in reality, the sound is gonna be great, the feel is gonna be great, you're gonna have a good time. But on the flip side, you have to face the fact that the American guitar, it's better. And I feel like back in the day, it was way easier to make the case for the Mexican Strat because it was like maybe half the price of the American Strat. But nowadays, with prices going higher and higher and higher and higher and higher, the gap is like way, way smaller. And like, for example, nowadays, you can get a Player Plus from the Mexican factory for like around $1,100, brand new, of course. Or you can get an American Pro 2, used on Reverb for like $1,100 too. In that case, did you really want the MIM? So all I'm trying to say is that I don't want you to fall in the trap thinking that you're saving some money buying the Mexican Strat and that you're going to be perfectly happy. Because the second that you play an American Strat, you're going to realize that it does feel better. And in this market, but they were pretty much the same price, did you really wanted the Mexican Strat? But of course, there is a case to be made for the Mexican Strat. Let's say in my particular scenario, I really want to have a guitar that is really good, that's reliable, that sounds great, that's comfortable, that looks great, that I can take to a gig in a heartbeat. And I'm not going to feel like super bad, for example, if it falls or if I have to put it in the trunk in my car and maybe I have a soft case. I'm not going to feel too bothered by it. So in my case, it does serve the perfect purpose that I need it to serve. What's your purpose? Is it worth it to get a Mexican Strat? Or should you just wait a little bit longer, maybe save a little bit more money and buy the American one? I'll leave that up to you, my friend. And for now, before I keep talking too much, remember, like if you like this video, definitely subscribe, stay warm, stay safe, go to the comment section down below and let me know what you think. Other than that, I'm out, my friend. Thank you for being here again.